Welcome to the Boneyard with Steve Robertson. As always, I am your good friend and host, Steve Robertson, here on the Hump Day edition of the Yard. We're going to go a little shorter today. Just going to let you know ahead of time. I got some cleaning up to do here before the wife gets home. Not bad. I got most of it done last night, but I want her to come home to a clean house. If you've ever been in the doghouse, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's like, oh, you've had all this time. Yeah. Nevertheless, I also spent the morning at the Bryan Building, spent some time with Zac Selmon. We're going to talk about that on the show today. One-on-one interview with Zac. That's my second one in about 3 weeks. And some clarity on the Chris Lemonis situation, the expectations of Mississippi State baseball kind of going forward. Also talk with him about some other things that are concerns to me. And I'm happy to say that he agrees with me on most of these issues. So I want to say this too, and I mentioned this on Gene's page. Guys, listen, I want to make sure you understand this. We get so caught up sometimes in all the things that we've got going on and things that are important to us. And listen, I'm your advocate, okay? And that's something that I take very, very seriously. When I walk in to sit down with an administrator at Mississippi State, I want to be able to ask them the questions that are important to you. So I asked him about logos. I asked him about branding. I asked him about NIL. I asked him about ticketing. All that stuff. And I'm grateful to you, number one, that you entrust me to subscribe to our website and listen to the show. So when I go in there, I am going on your behalf. I'm not just going there to talk about, Motley Crue or something, right? I mean, that's just not my objective. I'm going in there to ascertain information that is helpful for the Bulldog family. And I take that responsibility very seriously. Maybe some other people don't. I've met a lot of famous people in my day, right? A bunch. I would say probably more than most. I would say I'm probably in the top 1% in the country when it comes to meeting famous people. And that's not in any way to name drop. So I am not awestruck to go sit down and have a conversation with somebody that's in the public eye. It just doesn't bother me. And so when I go in there, I'm not just happy to be sitting there interviewing Dak Prescott or interviewing Zac Selmon or anybody else, Jake Mangum, right? It's just part of what we do. And so I say that because I'm not going to go in there and just say, oh, how great it was that I got to go meet Zac Selmon. Not that he's not a great guy, and it's not that I'm not a respecter of the position or a person, but the bottom line is I've got a job to do when I go in there. And it's not just to sit there and just lob softballs and call it a day and go right up an interview and say, hey, we got our job done today. No, it's not how we do it. Maybe some other people do it that way. That's not how I do it. And listen, there's a lot that I could say about people in the media. There's even some things that I could say about some people in the Mississippi State media. But I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to keep doing my job. That's what I'm going to do. They can do what they want to do, how they see fit, and I'm going to do how I see fit. And there is a reason that I have been involved in this since 1997, period. So we're going to continue to do a good job as best we can. And I look forward to going and sitting down with Zac Selmon because there's so many times, too, I never know where the conversations are going to go. And I don't mean that in a Mike Leach sort of way, God rest his soul. But Zac, when I go interview him, he always has questions for me. And it's mainly about what you guys are talking about. He wants to know. And I've met him a few times casually at ball games, kind of introduced myself. But the 2 times that I've had a chance to sit down with him one-on-one and just kind of have an open dialogue on and off the record, I've been very, very impressed. I have been. And it was so much more comfortable this time. Last time was great. This time is even more comfortable, I think, because I've established some credibility with him. But I think it's one of those things, too, that in order for you guys to get the answers that you want, you got to have somebody that's willing to and has the ability to go sit down and ask a question and frame it up in a way where we can get an answer. Last time I went, I thought he was a little more guarded. This time I think he was a little more open. And so you can read that in its entirety at genespage.com right now, available for VIP members. And you'll have to forgive me because I'm going to give you some things, some details today, but the rest of it you'll have to read for yourself. And because it was an exclusive one-on-one interview, that's something that we're going to reserve for our subscribership. So I'm not going to give you everything. I'm going to give you a few things here on the show, but you're going to have to go read for yourself if you want to read what he had to say about everything. Let's thank our friends at Bulldog Burger Company. I am probably going to go have dinner again there today. Probably. The wife's coming home, and I'm going to be honest with you. I may have a problem. I mean, honestly. Because I almost ordered 2 Mississippi barbecue burgers the other day for dinner. Almost. I didn't have lunch that day. Just popped a bag of popcorn, ate a snack, and said, well, I'll just go have a big dinner, which isn't the healthiest of things. But nevertheless, I wanted it so bad, I almost got 2, and I thought, if I order 2, number one, it's the last meal of the day. Probably don't want to sleep like that, on a big full stomach. But also, too, I don't want anybody to think, hey, Steve's got a problem. And maybe I do. Because ever since I walked out of Bulldog Burger Company, I've been thinking about going back to get another Mississippi barbecue burger. I didn't have the spring rolls. I mean, listen, guys, honestly, I don't want to overdo it. I'm beautiful enough as it is. I just kind of maintain. I can't eat a whole order of spring rolls by myself and then expect to make it home, without some type of, interaction. You know what I'm saying. You got to trust it. And I saw a remarkable transformation the other day from a young man that shared it with me. His original face, the spring rolls, and the next thing you know, he's Adonis. It's incredible. It is. So thanks for sharing that. It's results you can trust. 3 great locations to serve you. University Drive here in Star Vegas, Gloucester Street there in Tupelo, Lake Harper Drive in the Ridge and Flowood area. Want to share with you, too, we got some takeover taps coming up. A little bit late getting this information this time, but we got some tap takeovers coming up. There's live music, there's tap takeovers. Here's the deal. And all right, so there's one tonight in Tupelo, and that's going to be at 5:30. I'm a bit later recording the show, so if you're listening to this on the way home, swing through Tupelo because the Good People Brewing Company are going to be there starting at 5:30. Go by and check out some of their stuff. And here's the deal, too. So Bulldog Burger Starkville, we're having a tap takeover on June 1st. June 1st, a tap takeover of our very own. Memphis Made is rolling in. The fun starts at 6:30. They're going to feature 5 of their incredible selections along with 2 chef-curated specials to go along with them. Yeah, so it's a special night. You get a special dish, special tap. So if you're into that kind of thing, and many of you are, go by and check it out. Again, that's tonight in Tupelo, starting at 5:30, and then on June the 1st, 6:30 here in Starkville as Memphis Made rolls in. Bulldog Burger Company, the place where people go to meet, M-E-A-T. All right. Let me give you a little personal news before we get into a couple other things. So yesterday, went down to Jackson, and a lot of you have been asking for some time, Steve, when's the next book? What are you going to do? Are you going to write this book? So we have come to terms on a new book contract for book number 6. And I'll be honest with you, just saying that book number 6, it's one of those things that it gives me a great sense of pride, but also, too, it's kind of overwhelming. Sometimes I think, is this really my life, or am I living somebody else's? But I'm excited. So many of you have responded. I put it out on Facebook yesterday, and the response has been overwhelmingly positive, and I want to thank you all for that. This book's not going to be a Mississippi State book. And, I've written 5. Of course, we got Flim Flam, Stark Villains, Alpha Dogs, Dogpile, and then I had the book of poetry, Bloom's Oleander. So I could have done another Stark Villains, Alpha Dogs book. I'm probably going to do that in 2025. Probably. I already have some interviews done. I'm just kind of amassing them as I go. So when I finally sit down to do that one, and we're tentatively going to title that one State Greats. And that'll be the third and probably the final book in the trilogy, right? Obviously, if it's a trilogy, the third one's the final one. And maybe we ended up selling those as a package deal because it's a story of our athletic history. But I leaned toward doing that one this time and just felt like I needed to do something else. Again, I've got some great interviews. And, Will Clark has agreed to do the book and a few other people. But nevertheless, that's going to have to wait. A lot of you wanted me to do a Mike Leach biography this year, and I'm not going to, and let me tell you why. There's a couple of reasons why. Number one, I don't know that I can do the book justice in the time frame allotted. even though the printing business is much better, like with Dogpile was supposed to be released in November. They didn't get it to us until February because it was a national paper shortage. Well, they've got that handled. They're turning books around in like 5 weeks. And so in order for me to write the Mike Leach book, if we get it done by end of July, 1st of October, or 1st of August, they can turn it around in about 6 weeks, and we'd have it in time for the holidays. I just don't know if 2 months is enough time to write a book that important, because it's going to require a ton of interviews, a ton of research, a ton of fact checking. And that's the thing about the book business is, when you write something, that becomes the accepted written record. So you got to make sure you got it right. And I've made some mistakes. I have. And you got to go back and, you fix it in the reprint. But the reality of it is I don't feel ready to do it. I don't think I've got enough time to do that book justice. I do want to write that. I just don't think I can get it done in time for the holidays and do a good job. And I think I owe it to Mike Leach to do my best job on that book, when I can really allocate some time. So we're leaning now towards doing that one next year. Maybe have that out in the fall of 2024. Maybe we roll that out for kickoff, season opener. Maybe we'll do a big signing at Campus Bookmart to open up the 2024 football season, unveiling the Mike Leach book. The second thing, and I'll say, and this is maybe the most important thing, is a lot of people close to Mike Leach are not ready for this. They're not ready. Guys, it's been less than 6 months. And I'm not going to go out there and write an unauthorized biography of somebody that I love and respect, like Mike Leach, without the permission and cooperation of the family and the friends who were closest to him. Just not going to do it. To be honest with you, I think it almost would come off a little bit exploitive. And that's just not how I want to do it. I want to honor my friend, not look like I'm trying to cash in on a situation. And one of the things that we're kind of kicking around too is when we do the Mike Leach book, we're going to see if we can't have some of the proceeds go to the Mike Leach Scholarship Foundation. Yeah, because there's a scholarship down at Mississippi State. Maybe we can help fund that. I'm sure it's an endowed scholarship, but I think it would be nice if us to make some type of contribution in Mike Leach's name. And maybe if they don't need that, maybe we use the proceeds and we give it to the Cody, Wyoming Little League Association, where Coach first became a coach. So we're going to do something good with that money. I just don't think we can do a good job. And I also, like when I think about, Sharon and Dave Emmerich and Mason Miller and all these people that were so close to him, they're just not ready. And I've talked to a few people, like Dave Emmerich has said, Steve, I'm more than happy to help you. I'll make all the arrangements and all the phone calls and all the introductions we need to make to get you interviews with all the people that were instrumental in Mike Leach's career. He goes, but I'm just not ready. And so we're not going to rush the process. We're not going to do that. I'm a person, despite what you may think, I actually do have some class. And I'm not ready, and you can only begin to think, if I'm not ready, the people that have known him for decades clearly aren't ready. And so we just don't want to rush that process. So I am writing my book of recovery. I was actually under contract to write this book back in 2000, let me think for a second here, 18. When we wrote Stark Villains, the initial plan was, so I signed the deal, right? Signed the deal to do Flim Flam with the understanding if the book sold well, we'd do a second book. And then when I agreed to do a second book with the same agent and publisher, I said, hey, I'll do this deal. I'll do another Mississippi State book, but I want to do the book of recovery. And so we kind of had an unwritten agreement that we were going to do that. So that was the initial plan. And then they wanted me to write the sequel to Flim Flam. My heart just wasn't in it. I just didn't think there was a book there. I was like, I think we've told the story, all we need to tell. That's not to say we won't circle back someday. Lots happened since then, right? But all that said, I didn't think there was enough meat on the bone to go back for a second bite. So to make a long story short, I pitched Stark Villains. I said, hey, instead of doing, Flim Flam 2, let's do Stark Villains. And Stark Villains, now there's very few copies remaining. So if you want to buy Stark Villains, you're going to have to buy it through a bookstore because there's none left in the warehouse. We're out of print. And so you can still get those. Well, then we were going to do the recovery book, and then the quarantine hit, and Stark Villains had done so well, and I still had, I think, about 4 stories that I was working on, and we said, hey, since we have all this time, let's take these stories and kind of add to them. People are home. It's a quarantine, right? And so we wrote Alpha Dogs in 2020, and it's the companion book to Stark Villains. You don't have to read them in order. They're both just kind of collections of stories written chronologically about Mississippi State athletics history. Those books are mainly about the rivalry. And so all of a sudden, the recovery book kind of keeps getting kicked down the road. And so then I was going to take 2021 off. After writing 3 books in 3 years, I said, let's take some time off here, let my mind rest a little bit, because it is a massive undertaking. No matter what anybody tells you. If anybody tells you writing a book is easy, they're lying to you. It's a very difficult and laborious process. It takes a lot of time. And so a friend of mine convinced me to do Bloom's Boneyard. I said, hey, you've got these poems laying around. Why don't you just put a small collection of poems out there just to kind of remain relevant? Little did I know, we sold a bunch of books. Never expected to. I was like, hey, we just, I'm going to self-publish this one. That's the only book I have self-published, contrary to the rebel belief. But I got all my money back and then some. Made a little money on the book, and so I'm not renewing it. I figure anybody that wants to buy it's already bought it. But nevertheless, wrote that one, and then lo and behold, we win the national championship. And so, of course, we had to write Dogpile. And kind of going back and giving you some backstory on that, the day that we played Notre Dame for the women's college basketball national championship, my publisher calls me and says, hey, there's going to be a lot of interest in a book. If Mississippi State wins today, you should write a book, but we want you to write a book about State winning a national championship. And I said, that'll be great. But I hung up the phone. I said, I'm so incredibly unprepared to write this. So ever since then, I have kept every interview I've ever done. I've kept them all. Football, any basketball stuff. I hadn't done much basketball stuff since 2020. But every baseball interview, I kept them all. So when I got ready to write Dogpile, I was prepared. I had saved every interview. And, of course, I covered every game home or away, with the exception of the game at College of Charleston, I guess it was, or the Citadel, whatever it was. And of course, we didn't get to go to Dallas because the interstate was frozen. But all that said, I missed 4 games in 2021. And we did Zoom interviews for those. So I still had access to those quotes. So I wrote Dogpile, the longest book and probably the most important book I've written to date, in 6 weeks. Because we were trying to get it out in time for Christmas for all of you. The printer couldn't come through. But nevertheless, I worked 18 hours a day, 6 days a week. And on the day that I was off, I didn't touch the book at all. I either went to the movies with my kid or I went to a rock show. I take a good trip to go do something. I took a full day off. And I said, I'll never do that again. I don't know if I could ever keep that writing schedule again. 18-hour work days. And you say, oh, Steve, you just said, no, 18-hour work days. And in some nights, it was so difficult to go to sleep. I started doing those little meditations on my phone just so I could go to sleep at night, set the clock, get up, and go right back at it again. And there were some days there where I would write a chapter and then get the editing notes back because as soon as I would write them, I'd go ahead and fire them off and put them into the editorial process, and I would get them back with proposed changes. And there were a lot of days that was all I would do. I would sit here at a computer, I would try to get all my Jeans page stuff done in the morning, record a show, and then spend the rest of my time working on that. And so my family didn't see me for a while unless they just happened to walk by the office, unless they were around on my day off. And so when you begin to think about the time that we have to get a book out for the holidays, and the fact that to write my own story, I don't need to interview anybody. I don't need to do any fact checking. I don't need to do any research. There's very, very little that I don't just recall myself. And this is not necessarily a biography. This is about life's lessons learned in 30 plus years of recovery from chemical dependence. And so I'm going to be incredibly, incredibly unvarnished and transparent with this. I'm going to tell you a lot of things about myself that you probably never suspected, and maybe you don't even want to know. But here's the deal: my focus is to help the still suffering addict and those who love them. And so I'm writing this book, and I'm going to put it all out there. And then I'm never going to talk about this stuff again unless it's in the vein of recovery. Like there's some things I'm going to dig up and talk about that there's some things that people that have known me my whole life that don't know, things that I was involved in, and thankfully the statute of limitations has run out on all that stuff. But I'm going to be honest about it. And I'm going to share it with you. I'm a different person today, and that's really a testament to God Almighty and then the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And so I am on the right side of the statistics. And so I want to make sure you understand this is not a vanity project, but I'm writing this in hopes of, number one, establishing some credibility with the still suffering neck. There's so many people out there that are suffering, and all they see is the finished product, right? They say, yeah, well, Steve's kind of cool. He's got all these tattoos and long hair, but he doesn't know what it's like. No, I know exactly what it's like. Our drug of choice may have been different. I know exactly what it's like. And so I'm going to identify with them and give them some credibility right at the gate. I'm going to identify with them, find some currency, and say, hey, I am one of yours. You are one of mine. We are cut from the same cloth. And here is the path that I took to get clean and sober. And so I don't care if you root for Mississippi State or Ole Miss or LSU or Arkansas, whatever your brand of college allegiance. If you know somebody that is struggling with addiction, or perhaps somebody that is young in recovery or even old in recovery, that could use some inspiration, I think this book's for you. And so the title of the book is going to be When the Bottom Falls. And a little story behind that real quickly before we change gears here. I love that Sleep Theory song, Another Way. And there's a phrase in there that it just resonates with me. And I'm the kind of person, too, like if I find a song that fits the vibe I'm in, I'll just listen to it on repeat. Almost like taking medicine, right? It's like it's a meditation almost. And I got to thinking about that phrase, when the bottom falls. And there are so many people that live a life of recovery or addiction, and there's so much out there. There's a lot of verbiage in the vernacular. It's not truly accurate. People say, well, they hit rock bottom. No, the only real bottom is death. That's it. Things can always get worse. And I was one of those people. The alarm clock kept going off, and I kept hitting the snooze button. I did. And they said, well, he hit bottom. Well, I kept digging. And lo and behold, I found another bottom, and then another, and another, and another. And so I'm going to share that, not in any way to praise me or to write my memoirs in some way to say, hey, look at what I have done or what I've accomplished. I am nothing today without the good men and women of Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, and the fact that a beautiful blonde-haired girl from Natchez, Mississippi believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. And she made me want a better life for myself. And so I'm going to write that. And there are a lot of people that were very instrumental in my recovery, many that to this day maybe I have not properly thanked. And this book's going to give me the ability to do that. But my focus is to share what I have learned. I don't want to die without imparting the wisdom that has been passed down to me and the things that I have picked up along the way. So I'm going to write this book, and it'll be out this fall. We hope to have it out in September, but maybe October, but we'll definitely have it out for the holidays, barring something totally unforeseen. First writing day is Tuesday, and we'll get to work on that. It's not going to be as lengthy as Dogpile. Dogpile is the longest book I've written. It won't be that lengthy. Probably be in line around 250 pages or so. We'll see how it goes. But my youngest kid graduates on Friday, and so I got family coming in, so I'm going to spend some time with them and trade some stories with them, talk with them a little bit, and then we're going to get to work. And I'll update you as we go. But I'm not going to have these long, extended segments on the show, because a lot of you people, that's not your thing. But I want to let you know what's up with me, because there's so many people, every time I do a signing anywhere, Steve, what's next? I didn't know. I just didn't know. And I've got a lot of ideas. As a matter of fact, I could put a 5-year plan together right now and give you 4 books that I want to write in the next 5 years. And it's important to me to write them. And I get approached a lot of times with projects, and sometimes they interest me and sometimes they don't. And so I'm just very blessed to be in a position now where I can kind of pick and choose what I want. And Paul Brown, of course, is a guy that's done a great job, is my agent publisher. And so I trust Paul, and Paul trusts me. And so we sat down yesterday and said, hey, this is what I want to do. And this is why I want to do it. And this is when I want to do the Leach book. And this is why. And so we laid it all out. And so we're committed to bringing you guys another quality product. So we'll open up for pre-sales sometime in the next few weeks. And I'll share that with you. But nevertheless, I'm excited to get going. And as Dana says, she said, the fact that I can hear the excitement in your voice tells me you made the right decision. And last night, it was all I could do not to get up here and just start writing. I'm so ready to get going. All right, time for today's top 10 list, and then we're going to get into some Zach Arnett stuff, some Zac Selmon stuff, and we're going to talk a little bit about the SEC tournament. Top 10 list is always brought to you by Close of Blair, closeofblair.com. Go to CLOSE with Blair, BLAIR. Blair is a mortgage professional. That's the best thing about Blair. Blair is my friend. I love Blair to death. But you know what? When you got mortgage needs, that's the guy you turn to, right? And you'll love him too. He's going to do a professional job for you. Guys, 22 years of experience. Nobody hangs around in any job, in any field, for over 20 years by accident. You got to know what you're doing. People won't hire you. And the reason people hire Blair is because he gets loans closed. Top 1% in the country, back-to-back-to-back years. Works with Fairway Mortgage, a very reputable lender, not some non-conforming, fly-by-night, subprime lender, not that's going to put you in a bad position. Blair knows what he's going to do. He's going to take care of you. And Blair is a Bulldog, has season tickets in multiple sports, and he tells me the summertime is when the real estate market gets hot because people are thinking, hey, I don't want to move when the kids are in school. You got more time to get out and go look. Reach out to Blair and let him get you pre-qualified to buy a home. Phone number is 601-500-2344. You can call or text him direct. That's his personal cell number. A lot of other people, you call them and you leave a voicemail, and then it's like a week, 3-4 days, they get back to you if you're lucky. Not Blair. Blair's going to get right back to you. And chances are, if he doesn't answer the phone or respond immediately, he's in the middle of closing somebody else's loan. Yeah, he's a closer. And he has closed several loans for Boneyard listeners. So reach out and let him know that you're interested. And he can guide you through the process. You're not going to be alone. And this is not somebody that that's just going to go out here and it's like, I got another client. No, Blair is going to hold your hand and walk you through this process. Looking to refinance, he can help you with that too. But again, it's closeatblair.com. All right, top 10 list. I had somebody reach out on Twitter and said, hey, they loved. Somebody messaged me directly, and another person responded to Roy on Twitter, and I forget the name, so apologize. And so they really loved the list that we did from 93, which was in honor of my and Dana's anniversary. And somebody said, well, hey, what about the songs you listened to when you and Dana were dating? Well, we didn't date for very long because your good friend and host is a closer, right? I'm a closer. I don't know what you are used to. Maybe you got to hem-haw around a little bit. I met her July 10th of 92. Our first date was August 10th of 92. We were engaged October 7th, 92. Married May of 93. May have shared that with you. But she went from being a complete stranger to being on my joint checking account in less than 9 months. So we didn't date for very long. And the truth of the matter is we would have got married much sooner had our parents been okay with it. But, we were grown. I guess we could do what we wanted to do, but we didn't want to freak everybody out. So somebody said, hey, what about the songs when you and Dana were dating? So I got you a list. And so what's interesting, and listen, there's no sappy love songs on here. Right, I remember listening to George Lamond back then. This is in Rose Bowl's post-clubbing days. If chances are, if you were running around at Shooters, which became Hooters and eventually Senior Frogs down in Hattiesburg, or Sharky Shuck and Jeff, chances are you saw me. You went to Fiestas back in the day, I'm sure you saw me. I was probably dancing with a girl you wanted to dance with. Yeah, that's right. Back in the day, the Kingfish, Neo Beach, the Metro, all those places in South Louisiana, Purple Parrot. You've been to those places back in 1991, chances are we were there. Matter of fact, I was at the Kingfish the night the DEA raided the place. But nevertheless, I continued to listen to that stuff. My original plan after I got out of jail, and I say it just like that because I'm an honest person. I went to rehab and I went to jail. I had to go to jail to kind of face the consequences of my actions. I went to jail. I said, I'll get back out. I'll put another band together. And I did, but we weren't a dance band anymore. Put a band together, and eventually our stuff got stolen. Our gear got stolen from our storage unit. And I said, you know what, maybe this isn't for me. So this list is going to be much different. I called her and got some input from her. And, of course, I had a reminder of much of these. But so this is not going to be just for one group of people. And it's music from the people, for the people. But at the same time, too, there is some rap stuff on here. There's some pop stuff on here. There's some alternative rock stuff on here. There's some hair metal on here. And so when I got out of jail, it's tough to go find a job, and I worked construction for a while, and then I had a band, but one of my old bandmates was a DJ, and so he had more work than he could do, and so I would DJ swaps at Southern Miss. Had some good friends that were Chi Omegas, and so I would do a lot of their swaps. In fact, I had one of my high school classmates was like the social chair at Chi Omega, so she made sure I had plenty of work, and if they agreed to a swap with the fraternity, she would say, hey, we want you to book Steve Robertson. So I appreciate that, and I had a lot of fun, and of course I was absolutely incredibly in love, so I wasn't looking to pick up any college chicks. I had the college chick I wanted. She was at Southern Miss at the time. So here is this list of when we were of us dating, the early days of dating. I tell you who didn't make the list, and I probably should have worked this in. We'll throw an honorable mention, and maybe Roy will throw him on the list for you. Maybe. I used to love MC Brains. Right? You know what I'm talking about? MC Brains. Oochie Coochie La La La. Remember that song? You know that one? Yeah. And then AMG. Yeah. The 69 King. Jiggable Pie was the one we really liked. Of course, Better Have My Money. That was the hit. I loved AMG. I loved DJ Quick. I loved all that stuff. I did. Your good friend and host had a wide range of musical interest. And so this list is kind of reflective of that. Number 10, a song that has got a little bit of a hip-hop vibe to it, but was more of a top 40 hit, a one-hit wonder from a band called Joe Public. And when you hear this song, you're going to be like, I remember this. Yeah, it's Live and Learn. You got to live and learn. And I loved it. And I think everybody used the same bass line on every pop song for about 6 months there. This is one of them. Number 9, a song maybe should be a little bit higher, but this is such a packed list. This song was everywhere, and we've had it on the top 10 list a couple times. When I first heard it, I was like, yeah, this is going to be a hit. It is. And it was. It's Rex and Effects Rump Shaker. Because, that was just back in the day when all of a sudden, girls with a little more junk in the trunk were really getting positive. That there were a lot of positive feedback about that stuff, about that particular body type. And I hate to say it in those terms, but it's the reality of it. And so Rump Shaker was big because of the fact that it was kind of riding the wave of all of that. Well, now you look out there today and it's like, I will submit to you, I don't think women have been better looking in the history of recorded man than they are today. Women are much better looking much later in life. They go to the gym, they get out, and it's more. I could talk about that and get myself in trouble. I'm not going to. But women today are hotter than ever. But Rex and Effects from the Rump Shaker from Rex and Effects, number 9 on your list. Number 8, I bought this cassette. I think the very first time that I went to Natchez to meet Dana's parents. And I remember I was in Walmart, and I knew the song. I didn't know the artist. There was a kid there, and I said, hey, who sings this song? And he looked at me without a moment's hesitation, and he said, Arrested Development. And that's right, it's Tennessee. I absolutely loved that song back then. I love it now. I love the message of Arrested Development. I loved how proud they were. I loved how they preached unity. They were a very positive force, I think, in R&B music. And this is kind of on the heels of gangster rap, and I think gangster rap has never really gone away. But Arrested Development was a breath of fresh air. And the song Tennessee was the start for them. That's your number 8 song. Number 7, this song actually goes back a little bit. Back more towards 91, but it was still rolling in 92. It is the iconic album from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Blood, Sugar, Sex, Magic. It was a song to this day that means an awful lot to me. And it's a song about addiction. It's about Anthony Kiedis fighting heroin addiction. It's Under the Bridge, where I drew some blood, because he was a heroin addict. And so Under the Bridge, that was one we listened to. Even though that came out in 91, it was still kicking in 92. Number 6, as I mentioned, I DJ'd. We used to have a couple of D non-pitchable CD players. We had a couple of 15s. I gave it 4 15s. We had a great mixing setup. And so everybody loved us because we had this extensive catalog. And I would go buy stuff every single week to add new stuff. But nothing in the entire time that I DJ'd, ever. And this is going back to when I even DJ'd at the Pedal Roller Dome. Yeah, I was lived in Hattiesburg, and I played music and then DJed at the Roller Dome in addition to that. But Sir Mix-a-Lot's Baby's Got Back. That is the most requested song I've ever had. And it got to be such a big deal. We made our own mix. 19 minutes of Baby's Got Back. Because like as soon as you'd play it, like the drunker people got, the more often they would come request it. And kind of like that rump shaker thing. Oh, Baby's Got Back. Everybody wanted a girl back, right? And so the reality of it is we just thought, hey, let's get creative here. And we'll make a mega mix. Kind of like Magic Mike, the real Magic Mike, not the movie, but the DJ. And we put together a 19-minute mix of Baby's Got Back. And we sometimes, like if people kept requesting it, we just put it on and let it play for 19 minutes so we could eat, right? So there you go. Baby's Got Back, number 6 from Sir Mix-a-Lot, whose posse's on Broadway. Number 5, Jane's Addiction was huge, man. It was big. It was a big band for us. And even though this album had came out before then, it's Ritual, De Lo Habitual. And I have actually, in this house, I have both album covers. The one that was banned and then the one that the plain white one. But the song 3 Days was one that me and Dana both really kind of, she was a little later to the Jane's Addiction alternative rock party than I was. And so 3 Days was one that we both really loved. And we talked about that moments ago. Very special song for us. 3 Days, Jane's Addiction. Number 4, and I suspect maybe at this time, this may have been Dana's favorite album when we first started dating. She knew a little bit of it, but I don't think she had the album. I did, and then like every time that we would get in the car or I would come home from work or something, she'd have it on. And it's the Gish album from Smashing Pumpkins, which is an iconic album in American alternative rock. And very, very, very influential band at the time. But the album had already been out, but it was kind of new to her. But the song Rhinoceros, I believe, is her favorite. And we were going through all that. There's always Mayonnaise and Disarm and Cherub Rock and all that stuff from Siamese Dream. But the Gish album was the one that kind of pulled her in. And we actually went and saw them play with Garbage in concert. And it was like she was a kid again. I mean, she absolutely loved it. So Smashing Pumpkins, Rhinoceros, number 4. Number 3, I suspect this is probably her favorite Pearl Jam song of all time. And I remember how impactful the video was. Like, we didn't fully appreciate what the song was about until we saw the video. And it was written about a school shooting. And it was so shocking to us in the early 90s that somebody went and shot up a school. It happens all the time now. And that's the thing, too, that I wonder about. And I don't want to get on my soapbox here, but it's like there's all this talk about mental health and we need self-love and self-care. If all of that is true, then why are we continue to have we didn't have any of that stuff. We didn't have all this, self-love and self-absorbed type stuff in the 90s. We didn't have it. We had coffee and MTV and The Legend of Zelda. That's what we had. And so now there's more access to mental health care than at any point in recorded history. And we're having these issues. It just boggles the mind, man. Sometimes I just want to get off the ride. But Jeremy from Pearl Jam, without a doubt, an incredible, incredible, incredible song. And again, it was just one of those things. It was just so shocking. Jeremy spoke in class today, and you didn't know what did that mean. Well, he shot up the classroom. And it was just so foreign to us. And it has become so commonplace now. And it's still one of those things, too, that, when I get to heaven, I want to ask God, why do young people die? It's one of those things that just, I know it all works as part of some big master plan, but at the same time, too, it's like I wish we could, we could do a better job with this. Number 2, and this is one of those albums, too, that was kind of, it's hard to really describe. There's some albums that just kind of hit you where you are, and even though the band had disbanded, but it's Mother Love Bone's album Apple. And I don't know that Dana had an album. Like even now she'll listen to this album. Like you go on her playlist and she'll have a handful of songs from Mother Love Bone's Apple album. The only album that Mother Love Bone did, who were the true pioneers of grunge. It wasn't Nirvana. Wasn't. I lived through it. There are many of you, and I wasn't high at this point. I was already sober. I lived through it, and I can tell you Mother Love Bone, Green River, Melvins, all those bands, they were the forerunners of what you know as grunge today. But Mother Love Bone, of course, became Pearl Jam. Stone Gossard and Jeff Ament, of course, left Mother Love Bone, the remnants of Mother Love Bone, and put together Pearl Jam, who was the band of the 1990s. As much as I love Soundgarden, you have to admit Pearl Jam, a little more success commercially, a little more of a crossover success. But Mother Love Bone's Stardog Champion, we adopted that so much. We loved the song so much. We'd go to AA meetings and we'd say, "Hey, I'm Steve. I'm an alcoholic, an addict, and a Stardog Champion," because it mattered to us. We felt like, hey, we were in our own little club there. I love it. I love every song on that album, every single song on that album. And a little just so you know too, there are some grunge and Mother Love Bone and Temple of the Dog references in Flim Flam. And if you're a fan of those bands, maybe you picked up on them, right? Interesting. I'm always playing a little bit of game with myself, right? But Stardog Champion, number 2 on your list. But number 1, and it doesn't match anything else on the list. It's nothing like any of the Big Butt songs, and it's not like any of this alternative rock stuff. But the very first time that I told Dana Hill that I loved her was after I played this song. You know, even though your good friend and host had some game, right? Because I'd been on the road, right? Had been a dancer and played music and stuff like that. I'd been on the road. I had game, but I loved her. I did. I absolutely loved her, and I got very uncomfortable, like kind of coming to grips with those feelings, right? Even though they felt so great, you know how it is when you're young and in love. It's like you don't want to get hurt. It's like I don't want to do anything stupid to ruin this, and I didn't want to say I loved you too early, but I did. I just said it, and I played this song, and then when she was in New Mexico, and I was so pitiful and pathetic and missing her, and not eating and barely sleeping and things like that, and so incredibly depressed, I went on Cameo and found CJ Snare and asked him to do a cameo video for him and for her, and we have some friends in common, and so I shared it with a friend, and as a result, thankfully, CJ gave us 2 minutes rather than a minute, and he sang part of this song and gave Dana some words of encouragement and told her how much I loved her. And it's Firehouse, When I Look Into Your Eyes. And again, this was kind of like at the end of the ride for the 80s hair bands, the early part of the 90s, you know. But all that said, that's a song even to this day means an awful lot to me. And you know, I can be riding down the road and I'll put it on, or it'll come on Hair Nation, and I'll get a little lump in my throat when I sing because it takes me back to that moment. It's like I knew my life was changing, and I knew that if I continued to give myself to this woman, I was going to experience something that I'd never had before. And my hope is you have that in your life. I hope that you have that person in your life that even when you're away from them for, you know, a day or two, it's like you just don't do right. You know what I'm saying? You just don't feel like the right same person. That's me. I am not too proud to say that. There was a time in my life I would be like, I don't care, you know, whatever, you know. But this was it, man. This was a turning point for me. And anytime I hear or see this song, it takes me back. We were her dad used to work at the International Paper Mill there in Natchez, Mississippi. And so we went and did the little tour, you know. She just wanted to ride me through there. And then there's like a car wash that you ride through when you leave the place. And I put the song on then. I said, I got a song I want to play you. Had it all queued up. That's what we did. That's guys that had game. You like get it queued up on the tape. You put it in and you play the song. And that was the one I played for her. And I told her, I love you. And thankfully, she said, I love you too. Which is the greatest phrase you'll ever hear in your life. Ever. Ever. The only thing that ever comes close to that is we got a healthy baby, right? But when somebody that you love with all you have tells you that they love you, there's nothing that compares to that. Nothing. So that's your top 10 list for today. And thanks for the idea. But there you go. And anytime we can talk early 90s stuff, it's always cool, right? Always. It's a great time in music. It was an interesting time in music. It was only when we got in the early 2000s that stuff got really stupid. Really, really stupid. I could talk about this all day. I'm not going to. But the reality of it is that the music of the early 2000s, it doesn't have any staying power. The reason that era is not defined is because there weren't any true headliners that had any staying power. That's the truth. If you have ideas for the top 10 list, reach out, let us know. You can find Roy on Twitter at Dogmatic67, his great list, our great list on Spotify also
at Dogmatic67. I'm on all forms of social media at Scout Steve R. Chances are you already followed me. If you're not, you should. Let us know. You may have a great idea. We'll use it. We got a lot. We got a back catalog, but you know what? We don't go in chronological order. We just, some days I'll say, give me a list, and he'll throw one at me. And before we get out of the month, I've got to take care of Roy's heritage list. We'll do that one on Monday, but we'll do Tina Turner on Friday. She passed. News of her passing came right around the time we were finalizing the list, getting ready to record. So there you go, your top 10 list for today. Thanks as always to Blair Chandler at closeatblair.com. All right, next segment of the show brought to you as always by Campus Bookmart, a Starkvillian institution. If you're not doing business with Campus Bookmart, you got to ask yourself, what are you doing? You're probably paying too much and not getting the selection you deserve. Go to Campus Bookmart next time you're in town and go see their smiling faces. Outstanding selection of Mississippi State merch. No question about it. If you can't make it to town, let me encourage you, visit them on the World Wide Web, courtesy of Al Gore's internet, at campusbookmart.net. And by being a loyal Boneyard listener, we'll give you a phrase that pays. That is BSR, which stands for Beautiful Steve Robertson. That gets you free shipping on all orders over $75. Any order less than 75 bones, absolutely incomplete. All right, let's take a quick look at the SEC tournament before we get to the Zac Selmon stuff. Real quickly, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this because we're not playing. In many respects, college baseball season's over for most people. But day one in Hoover was dominated by the pitching. 3 shutouts in 4 games. South Carolina 9-0 winners over Georgia. You got to wonder what this means for Scott Strickland's job security there in Athens. Just not exactly sure. You know, they just kind of meandered along a little bit and barely made the tournament. And we probably should have put them taking care of business. Us and LSU, we're coming up a couple wins short there. But nevertheless, Georgia ekes into the tournament and then doesn't score a run. Texas A&M 3-0 winners over Tennessee. That probably eliminates Tennessee from a hosting opportunity. And you hate to see it, right? You do. Alabama battling for a hosting opportunity. 4-0 winners over Kentucky. I still think Kentucky will host. They got the number 2 RPI in the country and one of the best non-conference schedules in the country. Kind of helps. They swept Indiana State, who's kind of been that G5 surprise team in the top 15 RPI. I think there were 11 RPI last time I looked. I think Kentucky will still host, I think. Alabama could play their way in. Of course, they're now in double elimination play. You squeeze out another win there, maybe you're in the discussion. Because I think it's going to boil down to Alabama or Tennessee. And I think you go with Alabama if they go longer in the tournament. They should. And then Auburn, 10-4 winners. The Tigers have won 9 in a row. Auburn is hot, man. Auburn is dangerous. And one of the things that I love about Butch, I don't know that anybody puts together a better postseason pitching plan than Butch Thompson. And that dates back to his time at Mississippi State. Postseason play is Butch Thompson time. It just is. They've won 9 in a row, 10-4 winners last night. It was a bit of a tussle early on, and then Auburn kind of got the yard work going, even though the wind was blowing in. I look at today's games. LSU 10-3 winners over South Carolina. Of course, LSU one of the top 4 teams, so they got the bye. So they didn't have to play yesterday. They take care of South Carolina. Really kind of did some work in the middle inning. South Carolina pitching kind of lost its luster a bit. And South Carolina, a lot of people were thinking they would be a top 8 national seed. I just don't think that's going to happen. I don't. I think South Carolina, barring a run out of the loser's bracket to the final, is probably going to be somewhere around 10 or 11. I think they'll just miss a top 8 national seed. I know what they're ranked, but that doesn't necessarily match up with what I think the committee's going to do. I think South Carolina, as good as the season has been, they faded a little bit down the stretch. And as a result, I think they're going to miss being a top 8 national seed. A&M and Arkansas currently tied at 5. Craziness out there. Jared Wegman just hit a grand slam for Arkansas a little bit earlier. So that game is interesting. Then Alabama and Florida will come up here, and then Auburn and Vandy in the nightcap. I think if Auburn wins that ball game, you got to start thinking about Auburn. How high can Auburn play up? I don't think they can get to a top 8, but I think they could be right there around South Carolina. I think they would certainly be. They're hosting. I don't think there's much question now with Tennessee losing and Auburn winning. Alabama, of course, is in there too. And if I had to pick between Alabama and Auburn, I would pick Auburn, even though Alabama won the series. That's what Alabama will say. We won head-to-head. I think there's a lot more metrics than that you have to consider. So I think Auburn is probably in a position to host. I think a win tonight removes all doubt about that. And then everybody that's still playing, of course, tomorrow will be kind of a wild day. A lot of games to be played tomorrow if you follow the bracket. But all that said, we're not there, which sucks. It absolutely sucks. And I spoke about that with Zac Selmon earlier. I said I'd much rather be in Hoover than sitting here in Starkville in this wonderful office talking about sports. I'd rather be covering sports. So with that, let's go ahead and transition into our Zac Selmon segment of the show, brought to you by our friends at Portico. If you're moving to Starkville, I would suggest going to Portico. And that's the deal, man. 1.1 miles away from the Mississippi State campus. So close enough for convenience, far enough away to have a little privacy, to have a little bit of, peace and quiet. I mean, you're not going to be, living within earshot of Frat Row. They can have a good time and so can you. You can get out there and quietly cut the yard and not have to worry about, pulling beer cans out of your yard. You shouldn't anyway. But nevertheless, next time you're in town, go by and see it for yourself. Turn off 82 onto 12, go into campus. The very first right is Pat Station Road. Go to the four-way stop. There's Portico on the right. That's how close it is, right? Be sure to go check it out. You can start with a 2-bedroom, 2-bath home, go all the way up to a 4-bedroom, 4-bath home, and anything in between. You need a custom build, they can accommodate you. Phase 1's completely sold out. Phase 2 underdeveloped. Many of those homes are sold, but there are some available to purchase now. In addition to that, if you'd like to have a say in your housing plans, you can do that. You can pick out a lot, and you can put together a custom build. Reach out to Brooks Bryan for more information. Diamond Dog Hero, Brooks Bryan, 601-416-8075. Again, that's 601-416-8075. Make Portico your next move. Okay, so I went and sat with Zac, got a call, and basically said, hey, listen, I called basically to get some clarification on Monday about Chris Lemonis. Of course, I had been hearing, that Lemonis is being retained, but it's like, hey, I'd like to get an official comment about this. I didn't expect the university to release a statement per se, but I was like, hey, I'd like to, can we get, kind of the thought process behind retaining Lemonis and not making a coaching change. And I've shared with you guys my thoughts on it. I still believe the shortest path back for us is to retain Chris for another year. Now, if he doesn't get it done next year, there's no question. There's no debate to be had. But I believe we're going to have a good year next year. I do. But to be fair, I believed it last year too. When we got through the portal, I was like, hey, we got some new toys to play with. We're going to be good. Little did we know that the pitching was going to be more of the same. And so I asked Zac about that, And he said he has a lot of confidence in Chris. And a lot of confidence that Chris has a good plan. They have discussed it in detail over the course of the last several weeks. Chris is going to hire his own pitching coach. A lot of people have said, I bet, Selmon and Keenum. No. They're going to give autonomy to Chris to make this decision. And that's the thing that I've always said is how can you hold somebody accountable when you're telling them how to do their job? You have to give them the autonomy and you have to empower them to make their own decisions. If you're making the decisions, then you're wasting a lot of money paying a coach. And so that's the big talk now is, what's the pitching coach situation look like? It will be Chris Lemonis' decision. It was Chris Lemonis' decision to relieve Scott Foxhall of his duties. And as Chris said, probably the most difficult day he's ever had as a coach. You got to fire a friend. And that's the hard part about working with friends is sometimes you give them more benefit of the doubt than perhaps they deserve. It's difficult at times to be objective when you work with friends. It's always got to be a principles for personalities thing. But I do think Chris Lemonis is a good coach. I think we've had a couple of bad years. And Chris has got a long way to go to earn back the trust of a lot of our fans. And I think that's just kind of part of the process. And you got to get the pitching coach in place, and you've got to have a very successful portal class. And Zac sees that too, but of course Zac's not in the middle of all that. That's what he's paying a baseball coach to do. We also spoke about the logo. Now, I don't know how you feel about it. Some people are incredibly invested in this. And there are some others that just couldn't care less. They're just like, whatever. I'm going to wear whatever represents Mississippi State, and I'm proud to wear it. And I see, both sides of that. I think that the M-State banner, I think it looks good on a lapel pin. I think it looks good on letterhead. I think it looks good perhaps on a road sign. And maybe it even looks pretty good on the Humphrey Coliseum floor. Maybe. I don't think it looks good on a jersey. I just don't. I don't think it looks good on a jersey. Maybe that's the university logo, but I think we need to use some secondary marks. I love the script State. I know some of you are like, what's the big deal? I love it. I think it looks great. I really do. I think, we are State. When you mention State in the Southeast, everybody knows you're talking about Mississippi State. Ohio State is a brand of its own. And Michigan State, they're MSU. That's how they're branded. But in the South, when you say State, among Southeastern Conference school fan bases, they know exactly what you're talking about. The only other state school is Louisiana State, and they're LSU. There is no other LSU. That's how they're known. And so, my personal opinion, for what that's worth, is we need to embrace being State. We do. I think the script looks great on the jersey. I think it looks great in our social media platform. I like the fact that we have embraced some change. And we've done, once a year we'll do a throwback logo. We've done the Flying M, and we're going to do the interlocking MSU this year, which I again think it's the greatest football helmet sticker we ever had. Not the MSJ, the MSU. Not the MSJ of the 80s, but the MSU of the 90s. It was our best logo. And for years, people said, oh, well, Nike owns the logo. But that's not true. It's not how it works. If somebody designs something for you, it becomes your property once you've paid them to do it. And so we're going to bring that back this year. We're going to do a throwback game this year, and we're going to wear that interlocking MSU, which will probably win the game by 70, which will be evidence we need to wear it more often. I don't really mind, the M-State logo on university type fare. I just disagree with it. I just don't think it looks good. Like I think about our softball jerseys, right? And then we got that big M-State. And it's just not attractive to me. Maybe you feel differently. And some people would say, Steve, why are we spending so much time talking about this? And that's a good question. I think a lot of it's because of the fact that I want everything connected with Mississippi State to be great. I don't want it to just be average or good enough. I want it to be great. And many people say, well, Steve, why do we need to change the logo? Well, why did we ever need to change it? Well, it's to be fresh. It's to define an era and a moment in time. It's to be innovative. You can say, Alabama's never changed their logo. And there's some truth in that. We have, several times. And I think many times, to be honest with you, and Alabama fans won't like this, but I think the Alabama uniform combo stuff's kind of boring. It is. And it's like, yeah, but when you turn it on, it's Alabama. Well, my thing is, if you turn it on and you need to get the combatants explained to you or introduced to you, you probably shouldn't be watching anyway. You turn on Penn State, it's Penn State. But Penn State's a boring uniform combo. It just is. And so we got to be different. We don't have the tradition of Alabama or Penn State, right? I mean, you look at what happened at Oregon, right? Remember how many people complained about those neon green and yellow uniforms and how dumb they looked? But you know what? Recruits loved them. And all of a sudden, it's kind of become Oregon's thing. It has. They're wild uniform combos, but you know what? Recruits love them. They think it looks fresh. And so it's not about necessarily making you and I happy. I want to do what markets Mississippi State, the student athletes, that makes us win football games, baseball games, basketball games. That's my personal opinion. I also asked Zach about Adidas. A lot of people don't like the Adidas stuff. I don't like all the Adidas stuff, but I don't have a really strong opinion about it. There are a lot of people that think, hey, we should just switch to this company or that company. Well, we have to switch to the apparel provider deal that makes us the most money and gives us the ability to brand ourselves the way we want to. It's not like going to Hibbett's and then you can just walk in there and buy whatever brand you want. It's not like that. You have to negotiate a deal. And there are some of these companies that have an exclusivity deal within their states. So say for an example, like, I don't know who Alabama is. I think Alabama's a Nike school. Yeah, I suspect that Auburn probably couldn't sign with Nike because Alabama is with Nike. And so I think that's important to understand. It's not like we can just go shop around and say, hey, we want to do Nike if Nike doesn't want us. And so Zac's got to make the best deal possible for Mississippi State. And if that's Adidas, then so be it. We can buy our apparel from whoever. But some of the stuff that Adidas has done is hideous. I mean, it is. And some of it looks clean. Some of it looks good. I mean, I've got a lot of Adidas gear, but I don't have all of it. But that deal is up in a year. And we are going to shop around a little bit. We may ultimately re-up with Adidas. But Zac's got to get the best deal for Mississippi State and for our student athletes. And to be honest with you, we're probably third or fourth in the packing order when it comes to that. You said, but Steve, we're fans. We are. But the reality of it is I can be comfortable in just about anything. I want our student athletes to look good and feel good, because when you look good and feel good, you play good, right? I can always, put on a Motley Crue shirt if I want to. But that's something that's coming up. And if you want to read more of that, you can. You go over to genespage.com and you can read his comments in their entirety. And I just think it's important to get that out there. And there were so many people, too, and this will come off almost petty, and if it does, so be it. There were so many people that were claiming to be so well-sourced about what was going on with Chris Lemonis. And I would put my sources up against anybody, when it comes to Mississippi State athletics. And chances are, if I don't hear about it, it means that somebody probably lied to me. Because I'm always asking the questions. And even after we got swept by Vanderbilt, we start 0-6 in the league, I start talking to people, and they said, we're fine. Even if the season doesn't go the way we hoped, and even at that point we thought we'd turn it around and at least make Hoover. Lemonis, of course, had built up a lot of grace with our donorship, but also, too, with the university. And we just simply weren't prepared to make a coaching change. And it's not that we're, unprepared. It's just that we went into this season never expecting to have to even consider the possibility. And while there have probably been some conversations that have been uncomfortable at times, I'm sure, for Chris Lemonis, there was never any serious discussion about that, about making a coaching change. And, again, I've talked to people for months about this, and I don't know if there's anybody in the Mississippi State media that has ever covered state baseball as extensively as I do. And so I feel like that I always got a pretty good finger on the pulse about what's going to happen. Now, here's the deal, and I'm going to be completely candid with you here. I want it to work out with Chris Lemonis and Mississippi State, primarily because that's what's best for Mississippi State. If Chris can't get it done, Chris will remain a friend, I'm sure, down the road, and we just won't see each other at Walmart, right? But my loyalty is to the M over S. And so when I come out here and say, hey, here's the reasons you keep Chris, it's because I think that's what's best for Mississippi State. I want it to work out. I can't sit here and tell you that I've got, a ton of confidence that it's going to. And you could say, but Steve, if that's how you feel, well, when you don't know for sure what to do, you don't do anything. That's how business works. By the time I've fired over 100 people in my career. And by the time I did it, I was so absolutely sick of them. It was an easy decision to make. And by the, towards the end of my retail career, by that time, I could kind of identify behaviors pretty early on that we could maybe rehabilitate and avoid having to terminate somebody. And I think that's kind of where we are right now. I think Zac has been a great sounding board for Chris, and it's provided the support that Chris needs, and also the autonomy that Chris needs to try to get this thing turned around. But, I want Chris to make it. I do. Because if Chris is successful, that means Mississippi State is successful. And that's what we all want. No matter who the coach is, you want Mississippi State to win. there were a lot of people, of course, when you think about it in years past, a lot of our people couldn't even tell you who the coach was outside of baseball or maybe football. A lot of fans out there, they just say, "What's our coach?" I mean, we've got a lot of fans out there that aren't as true maroon maybe as you are. They don't have that same intimate knowledge of the program and of the benefactors and participants that kind of depend on ESPN to tell them that. But the reality of it is the decision has been made. No matter how anybody feels about it, it is time to move forward. And I do think that Chris Lemonis doesn't have much leash for next year. And again, if he can't get it done, there's absolutely no debate. The only thing that needs to be considered next year, if he can't get it done, is who the next coach is. And I'm not one that ever advocates firing a coach. And, I'll be honest with you, I was extremely disappointed with the Ben Howland experience, extremely, as voiced on this show many times. But his final year here, there were some times that he showed some real flashes, and the team responded. And I thought, hey, look at this. This is going to work out. Of course, things faded down the stretch. Ultimately, we had to make a decision. But by the time we fired Ben Howland, everybody was in agreement. And remember this time last year, so many people were saying, hey, if Mike Leach loses the Egg Bowl, we got to fire him. Forget the rest of the season. We lose the Egg Bowl again, we got to fire him. And then not only did we win the Egg Bowl, we won a bowl game. And sadly, Coach wasn't with us when we won it, but we won a bowl game and had a top 20 finish in Mike Leach's final season as a collegiate football coach. But there again, there were a lot of people would quote sources that were telling you if we didn't win the Egg, he's gone. That wasn't true, but that's what they were telling you. And I remember middle of the year, there were so many people in the media. Ole Miss is leaving us behind. And I said back then on this show and many others, what are you going to do when State and Ole Miss end the year with the same record? It's never going to happen. Well, it did. And then we have the Egg, we have the bowl win, we have the top 20 finish. They have none of those things. So I ask you, who's leaving who behind? You're like, oh, well, yeah. I mean, listen, sometimes you just got to take the loss and admit you were wrong. I was wrong about this baseball team this year. I was right about Kentucky. I was wrong about Mississippi State. I'd much rather have been wrong about Kentucky and right about State. Little did I know that we'd have the pitching problems we have. And now we believe we've taken corrective action to fix it, so we'll move forward. But the reality of it is that, sometimes firing somebody isn't the right decision. I remember in 1996, and many of you will remember this, that, we had a 3-win Mississippi State team down the stretch in football. And everybody was ready to fire Jackie Sherrill. Everybody. Everybody. And then he beats Alabama, which led to the resignation of Gene Stallings at Alabama. And then we win the Golden Egg, and even though we missed out on the bowl picture and went 5-6 that year, we felt like, hey, we figured some things out. We've got some things turned around. And so people ask, well, we ever had a coach that had a couple of bad years and turned it around? Well, not really in baseball. But there is precedent in football. And Jackie Sherrill, one of the most beloved coaches ever in Mississippi State history. And you know what happened after that 96 season for you young bucks that weren't even alive back then? 97, we had a 7-4 year, and had we won the Egg Bowl, we'd have gone to the Motor City Bowl. They went instead and beat Randy Moss in the Motor City Bowl in Marshall and Chad Pennington. And we sat at home with a 7-4 record. And that was one of the things, too, that where the SEC began to have more of a say in bowls. That's when that discussion first started. And then after Alabama got to go to the Independence Bowl at 6-6 over Ole Miss, that's when it really picked up in earnest here a couple of years in the early 2000s. But all that said, 97 we go 7-4, and 98 we win the West and should have beaten Tennessee in the SEC championship game. 99 we go 10-2 in regular season, and in 2000 we had an 8-4 year, dropped some games we shouldn't have, and next thing you know, the Ole Miss machine and their private investigators and all that stuff, and NCAA, that became an issue for us. But one of the greatest heydays in Mississippi State football history came because we decided not to fire Jackie Sherrill when everybody wanted to. So I say that because it is not without precedence. There are some that can turn it around. And again, when you want somebody gone, you can find enough reasons to fire them. And when you want somebody to stay, you can find enough reasons to keep them. But at the end of the day, it was Zac Selmon's decision. Absolutely his decision. And he's elected to keep Chris Lemonis. And so now, what we have to do is just move forward and kind of get behind the team, get behind hiring a great pitching coach, get behind, having a great portal class, and then navigating through this draft. And, and some of the guys, too, that are draft eligible, it's probably best they move on, right? We got to have roster retention of some of these guys, too, like Hunter Hines. I mean, that's, Hunter wants to be here. We're probably going to have to make sure we get some NIL money to him because there are going to be other people out there that will be reaching out. And, yes, it's illegal. It is. But that's the reality of the world we live in. And so Hunter Hines is a big part of what we're going to need to do. We got to take care of that. We do. We got to take care of Hunter Hines. We do. We got to take care of Dakota Jordan. We got to get some guys healthy on the mound, and we got to add to what we have. And then we got to hope for the best. I'm a guy that's eternally optimistic when it comes to Bulldog baseball. But the reality of it is that I think we've got enough pieces coming back if we can stay healthy. When you think about Brooks Auger, Stone Simmons, Nate Williams, some of those guys coming back, perhaps Pico later in the year. But you can't just rely on that. We've got to go out and get some other pieces. But I think there are enough pieces to make it interesting. We have got to supplement that. Listen, you're going to have some Diamond Dogs go in the portal, and then you're going to have people in the Facebook groups who are going to say, I told you. And you're not going to realize, too, that some of these guys are leaving because it's probably best for both us and them. You need to understand that. And so there will be some guys go in the portal seeking their playing time. It doesn't mean it's an indictment on your coaching staff or your program or your administration. And there are a lot of people out there, this is one of the last things I'm going to say, a lot of people out there, it's like we don't get what we want, so we want to label Zac Selmon. Well, if Zac Selmon didn't fire him like I wanted him to, then Zac Selmon must be an idiot. Maybe you're the idiot. Did you ever consider that? Maybe you're wrong. So it's like, our athletic director hadn't done anything. Zac Selmon sat down with me today and was very candid and frank about Bulldog baseball. He didn't owe that to me, but he's doing that for you. He's sharing that for you so you kind of understand what's taking place and kind of what his thought process was. And again, you can read that in its entirety over at genespage.com. You can. He didn't have to sit down with me. And I think Zac Selmon is a very intelligent person. And whether he's made the right decision, only time will tell. But I tell you this, the guy is excited about Bulldog athletics. And the more times that I visit with him and have a chance to interact with him, the more I realize that I believe Dr. Mark Keenum made the right decision. All right, let's get out of here. And if you hadn't done so, go to dogpilebook.com. You can get copies of Dogpile, Flim Flam, and Alpha Dogs. Bloomsville Oleander soon leaving the market. If you hadn't got it, you can get it at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, BooksAMillion.com. Stark Villains gear always available at StarkVillains.com. Get yourself a Stark Villain t-shirt. Be the coolest kid in your class. And come join our band of maroon misfits over at GenesPage.com. Until next time, let's all live our lives in a way we make more friends than enemies, and people can see a difference in the way we live.